How long will it take to resolve my personal injury case? That's a question I get a lot. And today I want to talk about some things that you can look at to get an answer to that question. Hi, I'm Bob Byrne. I'm an attorney who represents severely injured plaintiffs here in Virginia. So let's jump right in. The first factor to consider is how severe are your injuries. You could have on the one hand a case where you just got shaken up a little bit and you mostly went to the emergency room or to see some sort of a doctor just to get checked out. In a situation like that where you're not really hurt, that case may resolve within a matter of days. You may get a call from an insurance adjuster. You decide it's really not worth your time and expense to hire a lawyer, and you say, let me just go ahead and deal with this. I'm fine. I feel very confident. I'm in good health. I'm not going to have any problems. And you're willing to take a chance that you're not going to have any other issues pop up. You can resolve it quickly. But if you have, say, a case where there are internal injuries or big orthopedic injuries or neurological injuries, that's something that it's going to take a long time for you to work through the medical component of your case to figure out exactly what your injuries are and how well you're going to recover from them. Our general position is that we don't want to resolve a case until our client has reached what we call maximum medical improvement. And that's where they're back to their baseline or they're as good as they're going to get. And once we know that, then we can proceed with the legal action to figure out exactly how much they should be paid. So generally speaking, the more severe the injuries, the longer it can take. But that brings us to our second factor, and that is how much money does the defendant have? And so typically, defendants who cause injuries are going to have insurance. And so if you have an injury that's a bad one, and let's say that it's worth $2 million, but there's only $1 million in available insurance coverage, that case may resolve quickly. And the reason why is because the insurance company has a duty to resolve a case within policy limits when they can reasonably do so. So a good personal injury attorney is going to make a demand early on and say, hey, listen, this case is worth a whole lot more than the $1 million in insurance coverage that you have. So let's pay it up and then we can all move on from here. If you're in a situation where there's catastrophic injuries and unlimited insurance, then that may take quite a long time to work out because you want to get the maximum value for your claim and you want an attorney that's going to seek the maximum value for the claim. But the problem is that case may have to go through litigation. It may go through years and years before you get a final resolution, either through a settlement or a verdict. And so depending on how much insurance there is, along with the severity of the injuries, that's going to have a big component on how long your case takes to resolve. A third factor to consider is how bad was the defendant's conduct. So if you have a case, for instance, where a defendant driver that caused the injuries was drunk as a skunk and they were driving and they hit you, that's something that is an aggravating factor that's going to increase the value of the case, but it's going to make it more complicated. If you have, on the other hand, a simple rear ender where your injuries are not that bad, the amount of insurance is not really in dispute, that's something that can resolve quickly. Oftentimes when you have these components to a claim like drunk driving or malicious conduct, that could give rise to what are called punitive damages. And punitive damages are meant to punish the wrongdoer and to send a message that this type of conduct is completely unacceptable. And that's the sort of thing that insurance companies are usually willing to pay only when you get right up to the courthouse steps or you actually go and get a verdict. So if you do have a case where there's some punitive conduct, that could be something that takes a while to resolve. The fourth factor to consider is whether you as the injured party played any role in causing your own injuries. So were you partially at fault? If you were, that's something that could generally complicate a case and make it more difficult. It could be the case that, say in a state like Virginia, we have what's called contributory negligence. So if you're even 1% at fault in causing your own injuries, you can't recover. Now, there's some legal nuances to that, and there's some defenses to that defense. And so that could be something that's going to diminish the value of your claim, even though it doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to exclude you from getting anything. But if you're at fault in other states, many states are what are called comparative negligence states. So if you're 30% at fault, then it may take 30% off the total amount that you're going to recover. Many states have different ways of measuring that and figuring that out. So that's something that could come into play if you did bear or share some responsibility for what happened. A fifth factor that can go into determining how long your case takes is who your plaintiff's attorney is. You know, when I first started handling cases, insurance companies had no idea who I was. I didn't have a track record of success. I wasn't someone that really put their insured at risk of an excess verdict. They didn't worry about what harm I may cause in their particular case. Now that I have a lot of experience and I've had some big verdicts and lots of big settlements, the insurance companies look at me differently. So they want to resolve a case before it puts their client at risk. And there are certain tactics that I can use that will really kind of leverage the insurance company's duties. It'll basically incentivize them to resolve a case. And so if you have an attorney that knows how to do that and to really push the right buttons, then that can help you get your case done sooner than if you have an attorney who is less experienced, isn't with a firm that really kind of has a reputation for fighting and working hard on a case. A sixth factor that's going to have an impact on how long it takes to resolve your case is the type of event that occurred. So if you're in a car accident case, for instance, that may be something that can be resolved fairly quickly because the typical kind of retail insurance companies like State Farm and Geico and Progressive and Nationwide, they're going to look at that and they just say, let's see what we can do to resolve these open files. I have a bunch of smaller cases that are worth, say, under $10,000. Let's resolve them as quickly as possible. Then you have on the other end of the spectrum, I handle a lot of trucking cases. When you have trucking cases, those are usually corporations in addition to some very sophisticated insurance companies. And so now you're talking about, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions upon millions of dollars of insurance coverage. You have a company that wants to protect its reputation. You have a company that wants to prevent scams. They want to make sure that they're only paying legitimate claims. You have an insurance company that wants to protect a business as opposed to an individual. And they're going to need to protect that person again and again and again. And so in a trucking case, it's going to take a lot longer. There's usually a much longer investigation period. There's a lot more that goes into the legal analysis. The insurance is different. And if you want to check it out, I've done a video that describes many of the differences between car crash cases and truck crash cases. So check that out if you've been in a truck crash case and you have questions about that. And we'll say for a seventh factor, there's a bunch of miscellaneous things such as how clear was the fault of the person who caused the injury. I hope this is helpful information. I hope that you're not watching this because you actually need an attorney. Or because you've been injured in a crash of any sort. If you have been and you're looking for direction and trying to figure out the right steps to take, feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to see if I can point you in the right direction. Thanks so much for watching. All of this is information. It's legal information. It's not legal advice. If you do have a case, please consult with an attorney. As always, remember this is legal information, not legal advice. If you have a case of your own, please consult with an attorney. Thanks so much for watching. I do appreciate it, and stay tuned for more videos.